In this section, we're looking at chord embellishments. Now, what that means is extra notes we can add to the triads that we already have to spice up the sound and make them sound, you know, a little bit more fancy, or, you know, they suggest different moods. Some, you know, may suggest something that's a little bit more, maybe if you're looking at a film or writing music for a film, you might think it's good for a romantic part, or you might think this chord is better for a moody part, or whatever. And the embellishment that we're going to do is called diatonic embellishment, and that's just a posh word for meaning you can only use notes from that scale. Okay, so if we take the C triad, for example, okay, if we're going to embellish that chord in a diatonic fashion, it means we can only use notes from the C major scale to embellish it. Okay, so we can't start adding, you know, different notes from other scales. You can do that, it's a different subject, but in this we're just going to be looking at embellishing the chord from notes within the parent scale. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is embellishing the chords that we learnt in the chord construction section, which was C, okay, D minor, E minor, F, A minor, a lovely B minor with the flattened fifth, and back to C. Okay, so I'm going to do these embellishments in the order that they go, or the order that I do them in. So, okay, here's the basic triad of C. Now, the next note that we're going to add to that, and this is called the 1 chord, so let's just remember this is the 1 chord of the scale. Okay, remember? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8 if you include the octave. Okay, so this will be the 1 chord because it's the first chord in the scale. So, the first embellishment that we can add is a sus. So, generally known as a sus4. And if we count up the scale again, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to be an F note. So, a typical example of a sus chord would be. So what we're doing is we're just adding that F above that third. Okay? And the reason it's called a sus is because you're actually substituting the third for the fourth. So you don't use the E, you play a regular C, and you put that sus above it. You know, another example would be playing a C there. And I'm sure you're all very, very familiar with that sound. A typical chord progression could be something like C, A minor, E minor, C sus4 to C. Okay, so that's going to be our first embellishment. Okay, our second embellishment is going to be a 6. It's going to be a major 6 chord, and we get that by adding an A to the top of the chord. So we play a regular C, and then we add a 6th to the top there. And again, it can be a nice chord to finish on. C, A minor, F, G, and then if you want a kind of unresolved sound, maybe there's a TV program or a piece of film music where 2 people have kissed and one of them's walked off and you're not really sure what's going to happen in the next episode, so you want to leave a certain unresolving tendency in the air, and you might want to use that chord because it might suggest something different to that, which kind of says it's all over and they've left and we won't tell you what's happening till next time. So that's just an example. So, recapping, C is the triad. First embellishment is going to be sus. Second embellishment is going to be a 6th. Okay, the third embellishment is going to be a major 7. Now, a major 7 is a semitone below the root, and you get it by counting up the scale 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And there it is. It's a B note, and a real easy way of getting it in that first position is just by taking that first finger off that C. And I think you'll agree that gives quite a sort of sweet, romantic type of sound. Okay, so just going over the embellishments again. There's your C. There's your C sus4. There's your 6th. There's your 7th. Okay, Let's move on to the next embellishment, which is going to be major 9. Now you might be saying to yourself, how can it be a 9th? There's only 7 notes in the scale. Well, we basically count up and then it goes into the 2nd octave, and I'll just do that so you can see. Count up the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And some people refer to this as a 2, which is quite acceptable because that's exactly what it is. But the reason it's given the name of a 9th is because it sits above the 7th and it sits above the 5th in terms of its pitch, because it's very rare that that 2 will be put in the bottom because it just won't sound right. It's normal that that note's put at the top, and to establish that in a theoretical sense, it's better to call it a 9th. Okay, so here's a typical example of a C major 9. Okay. So there we go with C, C sus4, C6, C major 7, and last but certainly not least, C major 9. Okay, the next embellishment we're going to look at is where we take a basic chord and we just add one of the upper notes, and this is going to be a C add 9 chord. Okay, so we know that the 9th is a D, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so what we do is we take a basic C chord like that, and then we just add that 9th. Okay, and a lot of people probably know this inversion. Okay, the next embellishment we're going to look at is a 6-9. Again, exactly like we said before, count up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is an A. And we already know that the 9th is a D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that will give us this chord. You can see we've got our root, we've got our 3rd, we've got our 6th, we've got our 9, and I can even put the 5th in at the top if I want to. And it's also bearing in mind at this stage that the 5th is sometimes referred to as a non-essential chord tone. So once you're starting to stack these other notes on top of the chord, if it works out that you simply can't fit all the notes in, the first one that you chuck off is the 5th. And amazingly enough, the second one that you chuck off is the root. And you might be thinking, well, how can you have a C chord with no C in it? Well, if you're playing with a bass player, okay, which generally most people are, if they're playing in a band or any kind of, orchestra, quartet, sense, or trio, whatever, the bass player will play the root for you, okay? So the first one you chuck out is the 5th, and the second one is the root. So let's just recap over the chords we've got so far and the embellishments. So we have the major triad. First embellishment is going to be the sus. Second embellishment is going to be the 6th. Third's going to be the major 7. Fourth is going to be the major 9. Fifth is going to be the major 6-9. Okay, now we have another chord which is called a major 11th. And if we count up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And you may say, well, that's the same as the sus, it's an F. But the difference is you don't use it instead of the 3rd now like we did before. If you remember, we did the C, and then we have basically covered that 3rd up. This is going to be actually as well as the having the 3rd. And if you, for those of you who know Joe Satriani, you'll probably recognise this chord. Okay, and it's basically a major chord. It's technically it's add 11, all right, because we don't have the 7th and the 9 in this. Okay, and there's the chord there, and you all recognise that. So, just to recap, here are the embellishments for the number 1 chord, and they sound like this: C, sus, 6th, major 7th, major 9th, add 9, sorry that was 6-9, add 9, 6/9, and a bit of Joe at the end.